recorded. Jim Spear is here in person doing meeting recording. I do want to note for the benefit of yourself and Councilmember McGreevy and Councilmember Pananopoulos that we do not have an in-person quorum for the meeting. So while we can meet and discuss and talk about things, the committee legally can't take any actual votes on anything.
Duly noted. Thank you. All right. I think as soon as Michelle is set up, we'll start the meeting.
I'm set up.
Okay,
I'm fine.
great.
No worries.
I'm Michelle. All right.
Hey,
so
Rob.
4.
Tell Miriam the flowers look great.
This is the Infrastructure Committee Tuesday, July 27th. So the first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes for May and June. Samantha had sent out the June minutes well in advance. I think I sent out the May minutes a couple hours ago, so hopefully you had a chance to look them over. Are there any comments on the minutes? Oh yeah, we can't approve technically. Yeah, that's a good point. We'll hold that till the next meeting.
Yeah, and if you want, I'll take, this meeting won't necessarily have minutes, but I can take some unofficial notes that I can distribute, to you all afterwards.
Thank you. All right, if anybody has any comments about the minutes, let me know, and then we will change them and discuss them again next month. All right, starting off well. Next, we have some information items for discussion. First, we have a skate park update.
Is that you, Samantha?
Sure, yeah. Sure, so, following up on our meeting last month, I, did some work to follow up on the action steps that this committee requested and prepared a memo for you all. I also ended up sharing a copy of that memo with the Parks and Rec chairperson, given that it's a subject they had discussed. So the memo is provided to council. I guess the highlights on the action items are that I talked to our insurer about the skate park. As the memo notes, the cost to the borough of having a policy that covers the skate park would be $1,000 per year. In addition to that, we would have to have some posted rules at the skate park, and our insurer gave us some suggested rules, not really suggested rules, some required rules. And then the other requirement from our insurer was that the skate park be in a fenced area that's locked when not in use. The other thing I did was I reached out to Jesse Clayton with Fifth Pocket Skate Parks to discuss the condition of the donated items. So I guess what I'll share for you all, of course, Jesse called me back after I sent the memo to you all. Basically what Jesse discussed with me is he thinks the equipment is fine. He just had some concerns about, just the nature of the equipment because it's metal and it's hollow. He was concerned about the noise that will be produced from hollow material, and he was concerned in the summer as to what temperature the metal would potentially reach. I told him that I thought those, I'll share the information I've gathered, and then I'll give you my commentary on it if that works for you all. And then the last real item of note that was requested by this committee is myself and Councilmember Bush attended earlier this month attended the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. And as I noted on the memo, the Parks and Recreation Committee did make a recommendation for the skate park equipment to be located over at Sabine Park. Now, if I may make some just general kind of thoughts and comments on the information that I gathered before opening it up, if that's okay. All right, thank you. So, while I certainly agree with the concerns that Jesse has, we don't live in a world of, unlimited money and dreams. And in this case, we do have skate equipment that's being potentially donated to the borough, whereas I don't know what the cost would be of getting concrete equipment, which is what Jesse recommended. I also would, again, this is not my forte, but I would wonder how mobile or modular concrete equipment is as well. And given that I think our goal is sort of a proof of concept and sort of a trial run for the community, maybe we go, if we decide to move forward with this, maybe we go with the metal equipment for now, and once we see that people are using it and anything like that, then maybe we could look into getting something different. In regards to the location of the equipment, Jesse also did share some concerns with me about whether the ground surface at Sabine Park would be able to support the use of skateboards over there. And I did, as well as a courtesy to Parks and Rec, I did share that information with their chair as well.
Clarification? Was the recommendation of Parks and Recreation to put the equipment in the parking lot area on the macadam, or put it on the grass area?
I defer
Because you
to
said the
either,
ground surface.
I defer to Fred or Mary Kay, who I appreciate being here today for clarification on that, because
Okay, thanks.
yeah,
This
it
is
was.
ground surface, it sounds more like.
At Sabine, I think they plan for the parking lot. I think that's the idea. We can clarify, but I think their idea was the parking lot.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, hi, Mary Kay. I didn't see her there.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry.
And so I did also send Jesse some pictures of the, of the tennis court over the tennis court area over in Haverford Park, and he told me that surface he thought that surface would work better. I asked him if he's willing to actually come out in person and take a look at some stuff. He told me he's doing some traveling right now, so he wouldn't be able to do that in the near future. But anytime we have pictures or any questions, he's been really helpful, and everything I talked about with him has been free of charge to the borough, which I'm really grateful for. He really believes in skate parks. He really believes in their value, and thus wants to provide some advice to the borough where he reasonably and efficiently can. So that's the I guess that's the information thoughts that I've gathered so far, and otherwise I look for direction from everyone here as to where we go next with it.
Well, I guess we can't make a decision as a committee. Can we make a decision to make a recommendation to council or bring this to council, or we just really can only do general discussion?
So I would say general discussion is fine, and if there's something you would like, I'll put it this way, if there's something you would like me to bring to Borough Council's attention, I don't see any issue with that. I don't think that'll be a problem, but you couldn't make an official recommendation. You could just say, hey, we think you should ask council to do whatever, and I'll say, yes or no, and but probably yes if it's coming from this committee. So.
Has he given up? Did he provide any sense of? I think we need to get our heads around, if we were going to do this, the additional ballpark cost to transport it, install it, right? Like those kinds of costs. Like if the next step is taken, if we were in a posture to make a decision, do you think he's somebody that can, who would they be able to install it for us, or recommend somebody, or how would we even do that? How would we even figure out the cost to transport it and install it? And for example, if we were putting them on tennis courts, it's not clear through the existing gate. I think somebody, maybe it was Fred, said that, or somebody on rec board, somebody had sort of suggested they'd already looked into that and thought that a section of fence would probably need to be removed and reinstalled in order to bring the equipment in. Those kinds of logistical questions, I guess. I just wondered. Do you think Fifth Pocket would be the right people to do that, or would we need to look?
Yeah, I could certainly, if the other members of the committee agree. I think that's a good questions, and I'd be willing to ask Sid Pocket. If Sid Pocket doesn't know, the other resource that I found that I mentioned in my memo is the Parks and Recreation Director of Radnor Township. Was really kind, and she spent probably 30 minutes on the phone with me talking about how their skate park works, and she offered, if we need any future assistance to reach out to her. So I feel like between Jesse and her name is Tammy, between Jesse and Tammy, I think we could probably figure it out.
And we have checked with the owner, and it is still available.
Yes,
Okay.
I did reach out to the owner. He did tell me he had given a couple of pieces away already, but that most of it was still there.
All right. So just looking at the request from the insurer, so we need a locked fenced area. So we can't. I mean, we're not gonna. I'm not sure we're ready to commit to like putting a big fence around part of Sabine and locking it. And that's a significant expense that. I don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense to at least try it in the tennis court if we're going to do this. And then if it turns out to be logistically bad, we could, presumably move these pieces. The idea is that they're fairly light, so they could be moved and relocated if that proves to be a good idea, or the tennis court could be restored to its traditional uses. And we could just pass on. I mean, I think it seems like the expense would be minimal to set this up in the tennis court. The expense would be significant to set it up at Sabine. Does that sound?
Yeah, my sense is that, I mean, for a proof of concept, the tennis courts make sense because Parks and Rec's recommendation to us currently isn't just sort of basically they've had the tennis courts inspected, and the conclusion wasn't that they're just some light resurfacing, it's that they really need to be redone, basically brought down to their substrate. So given that they are in that state right now, like this is the best time to use that space for a proof of concept for another community use. So, because I don't think it's going to matter to resurfacing the tennis courts how much more damage they get from skateboards. I think they're already at the point where they need to be jackhammered up and redone. So what better time to use that space to sort of explore this recreational activity for the community?
And if I may for a minute on that note, I don't know if today is really the right time to get into a full discussion on that, but if Councilmember Bush, as chair of this committee, is ever open to it, I would love to have an opportunity to chat with you all about the tennis court and the history on that, and where the borough, long term needs to go with the tennis court to get it fixed and where it should be.
Yeah, the rec board has a long history of advocating for tennis court repairs as well, so they ought to present their arguments to you as well, with their history of requests. Okay, so I think we have a potential plan to investigate. I think we should get more information about this. Samantha, do you need? So it sounds like we like the idea of a pop-up trial in the tennis court, but we should gather more information about how much it would cost, and yeah, or I don't think we're quite ready to do it yet.
So what I'll do is I'll talk to Jesse and Tammy, and maybe even like Fran Dixon over here as well, and get a sense of what it would take and what it would cost to actually get the equipment over, to where we want it, and the cost to install it. I'll probably do it for both. Here's what I'll do. I'll do it for both locations, and that way you all have a cost for both. I think you're right that the cost for one would be more than the other, given that you'd have to install fencing in the parking lot of Sabine. But I can at least figure that out for you and give you a ballpark on both of those for your next meeting, and then you can finalize. If you want to do it, you can finalize the location and we can get it set up.
We should also confirm or figure out if there are any regular users of the tennis courts, like who. I know some of the sports actually practice there, like they do sprints there or something. So we should check probably with rec board and see who's regular users.
That's true.
Any other comments on this issue from members of the committee? Okay. Next information item is outdoor dining. Samantha, you want to?
Sure.
Take it away.
Sure. It was brought to my attention by the borough solicitor that Borough Council passed a resolution. Sorry, the train's going by. All right. Borough Council passed a resolution, to allow for the outdoor dining that's happened in the borough. That resolution actually expired in December of last year, and with the recent changes with the governor's order coming to an end, the solicitor recommended to me that I talk to you all about deciding what does the borough want, outdoor dining to look like long term, and then crafting any borough regulations to go along with it. Of course, with the caveat that there are regulations from the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board that also govern this. But basically, it sounds like, again, I am not an attorney. This is me trying to channel the spirit of John Walco. Is that basically even with the Liquor Control Board regulations, the borough would also need to make some kind of accommodation and guidelines for outdoor dining in order for it to happen if this committee and borough council wants it to happen.
So, one of the things that occurred to me was that I didn't realize that the resolution had expired in December. That puts it in a different framework, although I suppose the only entity to really enforce a business's use of outdoor dining right now would be us. So it may not really matter that much, but I guess my thought was in some ways this might seem like I wonder what you would think about this being a pilot for Michelle and you, in particular Michelle, with her communications emphasis in her job description, to sort of find a way to use this to sort of maybe put out a questionnaire or something to gather public feedback in a way that could be useful to council in making this decision. Because it's sort of like, a lot of whether we should continue this and how much of how many parking spaces should be dedicated to this seems to me depends on the feelings of the people who use this space the most, which is the public. And it's hard for me to gauge on my own. So that was my thought.
Honestly, I'm not usually a fan of discussions on Facebook, but we could just put this on Facebook and say, hey, we're thinking about extending it. What do y'all think? I mean, this is the kind of issue that's, general enough that we could gather some useful opinion that way. Have we heard any, have we heard complaints in any way or any kind of official people complaining about the usage? Anybody heard anything? No?
At least on the 2 months I've worked here, I haven't heard anything like that. And yeah, I mean, to Michelle, Councilor Panopoulos' idea about doing that, I absolutely think Michelle Carroll could put together some sort of public outreach, whether it's via Facebook, whether it's via the borough's weekly email, whatever method she thinks is going to get us the best response. I do think there is some allure to Facebook because A, lots of people use it, and B, you would potentially capture people, and the email might as well, people who don't just live in the borough, but people from outside the borough who come to visit our restaurants and stores.
Sounds good. I think we should also get like an official, or get the NBA to give us some feedback as well. Yeah, and right now I'm in favor of just not pretending the ordinance is still in effect and not worrying about it. I think it's a good idea to institute a long-term fix, but in the short term, we can continue with the status quo.
Yeah, I mean, it's Fred, it's consistent with the parklets that we had, when was that? 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
So I would support it.
Okay. Any other comments on the issue? All right. So we have a potential action item coming up, which is an ordinance for park rules. This has been discussed multiple times in this committee, and it was discussed last month in Rec Board. I know Mary Kay is here, so she can answer questions about that. All right. I saw, Samantha, that you had sent out the memo with the official sort of list of things that Rec Board had come up with. And I'll just go ahead and read for that. This is what they're proposing. This is a list that was developed a couple years ago, and Rec Board still recommends it. So no fires, including campfires or grilling fires. No use of firearms, fireworks, or any explosive material. No driving or riding any vehicle on park grounds. This includes bicycles. No private instruction or sale of items which requires exchange of remuneration that has not been approved by the borough. No smoking of any products, and no use of alcohol in any event in which minors are participants or in an event that has not been approved by the borough for the consumption of alcohol. Those are in addition to the current rules about park hours and no dogs, or no animals, I guess, in the park. Anybody have comments, and also any questions for Mary Kay since she's here?
I'm really grateful to the Park and Rec Committee for putting this together and sending it over. And Mary Kay, you're welcome to jump in here, but the vibe I got was the Parks and Rec Committee felt this would be a good start, and then if any other problems develop down the line, we could always amend it to either remove or add or change things. And of course, what would happen is if this committee is comfortable with it, the next step would be for me and the borough solicitor to actually write up an actual ordinance and make sure that everything we're proposing we can actually legally enforce. Which I think the only thing I would have a concern about our actual ability to enforce would be, again, I'm not an attorney, disclaimer again, would be the ban on firearms. There have been cases in regards to that. So that'll be something I'd want the solicitor to take a look at. But I think all the rest of it we could definitely do. And I think, for what it's worth from me, I think it's a really great step in the right direction.
I think that these regulations were all taken from existing regulations in other places. I think that was the template. Basically, people picked and chose, what the rules were elsewhere, and picked the ones they thought made sense. Mary Kay, is that your understanding of how this process went? Do you remember that?
Right. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing this up and for having me here. We lifted a number of those items from our neighboring townships and Philadelphia Parks and Rec, and hopefully they're non-controversial. I do understand the concern about firearms if that's enforceable. I would say in turn, just one, the only thing I have to add is just if we had to prioritize among them, if there was an issue, I think immediate concern is damage to the baseball field that has to be repaired by our groups of volunteers. So riding bicycles on the park and certainly smoking, I would say, is another one that we would very much like to, if we had to prioritize among them.
Well, I'm hopeful that we can do this all fairly quickly in one big, one single resolution. So there shouldn't need to be priorities. Okay, Rob?
Just on point 4, the private instruction, I wonder if that would be an issue, with, some of our kids going to soccer, that's, I guess, approved by the borough. But maybe someone would be, I don't know, maybe, tennis lessons. I don't know, maybe the yoga studio. Some of that was going on, I think, during the pandemic, right? That people could, but that, I guess that was approved by the borough.
I think it's really good that we have that language, and I have been, talking with I met with the NAA last week, and I'm starting to talk to folks about how those protocols and procedures work, and I think eventually those conversations are going to result in some materials coming to Borough Council.
Michelle, any concerns with the rules?
Thank you to Parks and Rec for moving this along.
Okay, well, I think I'm comfortable, Samantha, if you want to bring this to the council, full council when it's fully baked, that would be, sounds good to me.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll talk to the borough solicitor. We'll get an ordinance written up, and we'll get it, before council to approve for advertising, and then actually, approved if council's good with it.
Yeah, and then just if you have to make it, if there's any substantive changes that you have to make, just go. Anything where you need communication, go through rec board. I would say any part where you need feedback, they would be the right people. Okay, sound good, everybody? All right, I'm on the wrong page here. Okay, next item. So now we're borough projects. So we have an update on the EV charging station.
Yeah, so generally good news on that. Turner, what I've told this committee versus what I've told public health and safety. So the signage is up now for the chargers, so that people know, generally not to park there unless they're charging. Again, all the money that were owed for them from PICO, DEP, Norberg Industrial Development Authority, all the money has been received for them. We have a tentative ribbon cutting date of September 10th, and so really the only real item left is making sure you can actually plug a car into them. So not a minor item. So I submitted the paperwork to Flow, who is the organization that we've contracted with to manage the chargers, and they need some additional information from our electrician. So I contacted our electrician this morning to see Keith Martin Electric to see about getting that information for Flow. They just need some information about like the voltage and amperage of some of the connections and the breakers and all that. I am not a mechanical person, so I just know, you plug things in and generally they work. But I think we're just about there. I think at our next meeting, this will be done. You can actually, we'll be able to use the car, and I'm hoping. I've been talking more at the ribbon cutting with public health and safety. But I feel pretty good by the next meeting of this committee that the chargers will be 100% ready to go.
Okay, so are we going to have a soft launch period where they're working, but we haven't had the ribbon cutting? Okay, great.
And do we set a fee?
Oh, yeah, so at our meeting last month, we had a little bit of discussion about that, and there was discussion of there potentially being the fee that was recommended to me by Flow that we talked about was $1 per hour. I believe it might have been, I don't necessarily want to name names unless anyone wants to admit to it, but someone brought up what I thought was a valid concern that the $1 per hour may not be ideal in the sense that it's good in that it ensures that people especially during the day aren't hogging the charger. but it would theoretically discourage like anyone who lives in the area of doing any overnight charging on it. And I know for a lot of, property owners, part of why, the borough, in my opinion, is investing in this is due to the fact that, privately there's not widespread charger adoption yet. So I would be open to a discussion as to whether the dollar per hour makes sense, whether we want to prioritize people using them overnight versus, people in the daytime, who happen to be charging while they're at the park or in the downtown or whatever.
I assume that the framework of this discussion suggests that the software only allows you to set one price. You can't set one price during daytime.
That would be correct, yeah. I can always ask them, but I would probably operate on the assumption that there can only be one price at a given moment.
So my understanding was, so we can always change the price, right? So we could start at one point, move to another. I mean, we're looking for that sweet spot where we can incentivize people, kind of, encourage people to use it, but also keep things moving, so that, no one's sitting in the spot for hours and hours and hours. So that may take some time to figure out what that sweet spot is, and it may change over time.
I mean, so when we say overnight charging, I mean, so let me just break this up. Let me just think this through. So, I mean, if somebody is parked at the charger and it's 3 a.m. and it's not actually charging, are we going to give them a ticket? Should we have certain hours that we enforce that rule and certain hours that we don't? I mean, overnight charging, you don't really need to charge for 8 hours, right? I mean, you might just, 4 hours is probably going to be more than enough for a level of your charger to get you pretty much. So it's like $4. That's not really a disincentive to charge, I don't think. If you thought that by leaving your car there, $4 to get 250 miles?
We have a member of the public who wishes to offer anything here.
Okay, one second. So I think it would be a disincentive, however,
My name's Chris.
Okay.
I'm the one who wrote Samantha about these charging kinds of things. The issue for me charging overnight is if we set a $1 per hour rate, the charger itself is the one who continues to notice that and charge you while you are plugged in. So while you might not consume for that entire time and while might not be an enforcement issue, it's just something that says, hey, once you're not actually drawing power, the charger still says you're still plugged in, therefore we still continue to charge you. Flow clearly has an incentive to have idle rates because they collect part of that money. For my 2 cents, I would say until we have an issue with idle vehicles just staying there and not having free spots for people who might want to use them, I would default to just allowing vehicles to be idly plugged in without additional charges. And we can change that in the future just through software, I believe.
All right, so thank you, Chris. What I was going to say is I think we ought to research this a little and come back with a specific idea. I think, just kind of noodling around, we're not going to come up with the right policy necessarily. We need to figure out what other places do and just propose that.
Find out if the fee for idle charging is baked into the software in a way that you can't change or not. Because it's not clear from what Chris just said whether it is or is not. And so that would make a big difference in my thinking. Right? If you can't preload 4 hours of charging and then it shuts off, if you don't have that choice, that's a very different system. So.
Yeah, it's almost like when you go get gasoline, you can either, which I don't think the chargers work this way, we'll find out. It's like you can go in the store and tell them, hey, I want, $20 of gas ahead of time, or you can just leave the thing in your car and then whatever, you use. But at least with gasoline, even if you do the latter, once your tank is full, it automatically turns off. It doesn't, continue to charge you. So, so I can look at both. I can talk to Flo about how they would handle idle charging. I also can look at how other towns that have these chargers do the pricing for them.
Great. And thanks for your feedback, Chris. All right. Any other comments? Okay. Next, we've got the Haverford Avenue Storm Sewer and Sidewalks project.
I guess I could just give a quick update on that one. The project is currently out to bid on Penn Bid. The bids will be due on August 9th. We currently have quite a few contractors, a lot of the names that I know and work with that have all pulled plans. A handful of questions, but nothing unusual. So we will see how the bids come back in time for to go before council during their August meeting.
Any questions, comments on this? All right, thank you, Eric. Sorry, had to step off for a second there. Narberth Avenue Bridge update.
Sure. So I hope everyone here has seen the the updates I've been putting in the weekly email, and so I don't necessarily want to regurgitate that necessarily. If anyone has any questions or comments, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I do plan on continuing, to do that update every week. And there's definitely work. What I've been telling people, there's definitely work to be done on the bridge. But I feel pretty good that the borough is doing what it needs to do, and that we're going to get there.
Thank you so much for those updates. They're really great. Several people in the public have commented how much they appreciate the information. I really appreciate you putting it together. Is there anything that we could discuss in terms of time frame or anything with the acquisition of the easement, or is that not something we need to? Just curious if how long that will take to accomplish.
Yeah, I can definitely ask the solicitor about. Well, for one of them, I can ask the solicitor about that, and can add an update on that to the email.
Yeah, I've also heard lots of great things about those bridge updates. I think the community is really happy to be better informed about the process now. And we've got bridge art.
So Michelle Carroll did reach out to Todd Bressy about that. To be fair to Todd, he's been pretty busy the last month or two here. So now that the historic district ordinance is off to PHMC, or if it isn't yet, it will be very soon. I think he'll have a little bit more time to look into this. I'm hoping that for our meeting next month, my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that Todd has received the submissions, and that they just need to come, to this committee to be reviewed. So, I'll have Michelle follow up with Todd. Michelle Carroll follow up with Todd about that. So for your next meeting, you'll actually have something to look at. Because talking with Amtrak, I had a meeting with them this morning. It does sound like we've added language to the easement with them to kind of keep them out of the, to try and keep them out of the bridge art mural process. However, it sounds like they're going to want to have at least see what the art is going to be, which I think that's understandable. They're technically not paying for it. But so basically I may not be able to finalize the easement agreement with Amtrak until we've selected the bridge art that I can show them. So that does put a little bit more time urgency on that task.
All right, but that easement, that's not stopping other things from happening, right? We can't go forward without the easement, but we can do all the other parts, and we can, right? That's not, we don't need to get that first, and then that unlocks a whole bunch of other stuff.
True. Yeah, that just the bridge art only holds us back potentially from the Amtrak easement, but the Amtrak easement doesn't hold us back from anything else.
Okay. All right. We should be able to decide between some art with without too much trouble, right? All right. Speaking of things that were postponed because of the Historic District Act, Michelle, Parking Study Task Force, is that, when's that going to come before council?
Next month.
All right.
Yeah. I think we wisely pulled it off the agenda for last week. That would have been pretty bad trying to tackle that at midnight.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, we would have been, yeah, that would not have worked very well. I agree. All right, last item on our agenda is the county transportation grant update. And I sent out a draft of the grant earlier today. Apologies for not leaving much time to look at it. I got good feedback from Samantha and Eric. I don't know if anybody else had time to look at or has comments at this meeting they'd like to make.
Yeah, Fred, thank you for doing that. I liked what Samantha and Eric said. Eric mentioned education and outreach. I thought that was a great part. And I can't remember, Fred, if you have the climate action plan mentioned in there, but certainly education and outreach is a big part of the climate action plan. So that's another link. And the other thing, it seems to me when I look at their criteria, my guess is that we would score very well in terms of impact because we have the stormwater management, we have the numbers, we have the plans from Eric. I thought the visibility part could be increased a little bit. Like we might be able to strengthen the visibility part, maybe by describing signage of some kind. To make it more of a demonstration project. So that's just something. It seems to me that they really want this to be noticed, not just by residents, but by maybe other communities. And so if there's some way to draw more attention to it, like even, there could even be like a media, like a press release or things like this, I think would appeal to the funders.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. So the climate action plan. I looked through it and I tried to dig out a couple quotes, but it doesn't really talk about the issue too closely because it's primarily focused on greenhouse gases,
right?
Less
right.
so on general area ecology, I would say.
Right. There's an adaptation section, I think, toward the end, but maybe that's what you already pulled.
Yeah, I got one quote out of it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I also just want to jump in for a minute and just again really just thank Fred, thank Councilman Bush so much for being helpful with this, as well as to the contributions from the borough engineer towards it as well, and to Councilman McGreevy's point about visibility. When the borough engineer and I reached out to the county to ensure this would be a project that's eligible for funding, the county seemed very intrigued by it and noted that they hadn't had a chance to fund a project like this before, but that it was something that they're something that they would love to see more of happening in Montgomery County.
Yeah, they actually track how much stormwater. They track this kind of thing at the county level. It's part of their complete streets, and it's part of the implementation of their complete street scheme is they're going to see how many of these are put in. So this is helping the county. I mean, this is their own. They're scoring points in their own system for this. So hopefully that'll help us out. Does anybody? So multiple people have suggested reaching out to the Lower Merion Conservancy. I don't actually know Maureen McGeehan. I don't know if anybody does here know her pretty well to ask her. Otherwise, I mean, I can ask, but figured if anybody knew her well, they could reach out to her. All right.
Yeah, I know her. I mean, if you want me to email her, Fred?
Yeah, that'd be great. Just so they ask for public support. So any public groups or community groups that come out in support of this. I mean, the EAC has already discussed it, but they're part of borough government basically. So it would be nice to have the Lower Merion Conservancy, which truly is an outside group, if they could give us a statement of support.
Okay.
For the project, and I'm happy to give them whatever materials they want to see. I think they've already they've already seen our PRP. I mean, they've commented on it, so I'm sure I think she knows what's in our PRP.
And just on a side note, I am working to develop a relationship with Lower Merion Conservancy. It's just been Maureen's schedule and my schedule just haven't lined up yet. But I do think in the near future, her and I will have a chance to get together and chat.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's any other groups that would make sense. We could ask Climate Action NARVs. It's not quite their thing, but they might they might go for it.
I think if we can get the Conservancy, I think that would be great.
Okay, let's try the Conservancy, and then the deadline on this is Friday at 5. So I'll try to have it finished up over the next day or so.
Well, what were we talking? Getting community groups to do what? I'm sorry.
A letter of support for the grant application.
Like independent.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Any other committee business? Okay, public comment. I'm just going to go in order. So, Chris Geiger, do you wish to make any other public comments?
Sarah's question alone.
The
we find out once our favorite.
I have compiled, and I will get to Samantha and Fred some very nearby stations in the Flow network, summarized by their different charging rates. They provide rates for parking, energy consumption, and time are the basic ways they do it.
All right, well, thanks. That'll be helpful for us to set the rules. Okay, thank you, Chris. Next, I see Carol Marie.
Yes, I have a question. Several questions. As far as the EV states, will the rates that are being charged pay for the energy that the borough is putting out so these cars can have the EV station? Or is the borough supplementing the charge to people who are charging their cars?
I'm assuming it's going to pay for itself, but I'm not 100%.
That's really
we will learn that.
I mean, that is really important because I don't want to be supplementing other people's electric use. They can, people choose to have an electric car. It needs to support itself. Another question I have is the bridge art. I would like this committee to consider just using the borough symbol, the borough logo on the bridge, because if we get art, what looks good today is not going to look good in 5 years or 10 years. The fashion of art changes tremendously. So I think having something plain, simple, classic would be a way better idea than having art. And also what some people think is art, other people think is not art. So it's a real hedgy subject when you talk about art. And then I also want to ask about the skate park. With it going to the tennis court versus Sabine Park, wouldn't Sabine Park have the least impact on residents? Because yes, you need to put temporary fencing up that can be locked, which is not that big of a deal. But what about the surface of the tennis court? If the skateboarders are on the tennis court, what about the surface of the tennis court? And what about people who use the tennis court? They're going to go absolutely postal on you for using the tennis court as a skate park. And I thought the tennis court was ruled out because of its special surface. And then when you're talking about how often the skateboard's been, or the tennis court's been on the agenda, like 20 years for resurfacing the tennis court. When was the last time that tennis court was resurfaced?
I don't know.
I mean, that's a big question also. That's been kicked down the road, for years and years and years. But using the tennis court for a skate park, might seem like a good idea, but really in reality have bigger implications than just a convenient place to put it that has a fence around it that can be locked.
Maria, I think people can't hear me. I don't know. Okay, I just want to answer your question real quickly.
Things. Oh, Mary Kay, do you have a comment?
Well, hold on.
No, Carol Marie, I was just trying to respond to your question, your comment about the tennis courts, because I know I might not be very able to be heard. This is Michelle. Can you hear me?
I have a really, really bad connection. I've had a terrible. I'm up in my daughter's up in Morgantown, so I've had a horrid connection this whole meeting.
Oh, it's too bad. No, I just wanted to say that I think that once Parks and Rec came back with a recommendation after they consulted with an expert about the tennis courts, and their expert said, look, you need to pull these down to the substrate. Like, you need to redo them from the ground up. Like, they're no longer resurfaceable. It was that opinion that made me think, well, gosh, maybe this is as good a time as any, since we don't have the money to do that right now. Because the tennis courts, it's kind of like what they basically said, it doesn't really matter at this point what happens to the surface. They need to be not just patched, but like redone right down to the very, repacked substrate underneath and everything done with a different material. So that was sort of the reason. If the tennis courts were resurfaceable at this point, I'd have a very different opinion about that.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea to have it at the tennis court, but I'm thinking of the people who use the tennis court that are going to be really annoyed not having the tennis court. But has the resurfacing of the tennis court been in the budget for several years past?
It's not currently in the long-term capital budget. That's the long-term budget.
Was it budgeted before and the money was never used for it?
I'm not aware of that. I don't know. That would have been before my time on council.
There was some period of time when I think it was like under 20,000. There was some relatively nominal amount that Sean had initially put in because he didn't have a better basis. I think the first capital plan, but now that the Parks and Rec has had this evaluated and come up with a recommendation of what we really should do, I know the budgeted amount was nowhere close to what we need. We need to really plan for it.
That's understandable. I mean, I don't think the skate park at the tennis court's a bad idea, as long as it's not going to ruin the skating. I know the kids have been skating over at the basketball, and that's not a good idea because that is a specialized surface that has been recently redone.
All right, thank you, Carol Marie. I'm gonna call it for your public comment. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only other there's another number I see here. Is that that's
the conference room line.
Okay. All right. So I think that's it for public comment. So thank you, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.